away on our travels. Mr. Cass, 40 to 1. How could I resist?
It doesn't work like that. Putting money on a horse knowing the result. You couldn't know the result because the race hadn't run yet. It's a paradox. So, that's a blank piece of paper. I did warn you. Time has rules, just like the rest of life. It won't let you cheat, and nor will I. Looks like you're going to be doing the washing up.
I wonder if they'll let us cook.
Well, will he get another go in the time machine? What do you think? Crime Traveller continues at 8:10 next Saturday on BBC1. Victoria Principal and Robert Vaughan star in the film in 20 Minutes Tonight, the true story of one woman's fight for justice, Dancing in the Dark.
In the wrong place at the wrong time.
You murderer! You liar!
Someone wants revenge.
Everybody's getting over this except for me.
Leave Paula alone. No!
Make it easy for both of us. I'll go away when they release you.
Stories from an open prison.
If she says he's pursuing her, hassling her, and he is.
You've got some opposition on the outside. The meat may inherit the earth, but they don't get special privileges round here.
A Question of Retribution. Insiders, Wednesday, 10 o'clock on BBC1.
Billy Connolly is Deacon Brodie, a Scottish legend, civic dignitary, lover.
You said you loved me and I believed you.
And outlaw.
Deacon's been stealing all the information he needs to decide how to do the biggest robbery ever in the history of Scotland.
A man torn between duty.
Oh, so much to so many people.
And desire.
I love you, Annie.
Family, friends.
Put something solid in your belly.
And enemies.
You're jealous of me and Annie.
Condemned. But is there a way out?
Somebody's been tampering with the rope.
For Deacon Brodie, next Saturday at 9:20 on BBC1.
The news and sport now on BBC1 with Peter Sissons.
Tony Blair has responded to the Tory challenge to say what would be in a Labour government's first budget. He says the windfall tax would be brought in within weeks of coming to power to get thousands of the unemployed off benefits. Albania's weeks of violent crisis. The president says the government will resign and talk to the opposition. And France storm back to shatter England's dream of the Grand Slam. Good evening. Tony Blair confirmed today that if he became Prime Minister, one of Labour's first acts would be to introduce the windfall tax on the privatised utilities. Also, in a budget within weeks of the election, Labour would start work on welfare reforms that would withdraw benefits from young and long-term unemployed who turned down training or community work. The Chancellor, Kenneth Clarke, said that robbing Peter to employ Paul was a backward step, a return to tax and spend. Our political correspondent Carol Walker reports.
Tony Blair pledged a future Labour government would introduce what he called a welfare-to-work budget within weeks of the election. He gave no more details of the windfall tax on the privatised utilities, but said the plans to tackle youth and long-term unemployment were well advanced. Jobless people would have to take up an option for training or work or lose their benefits.
And the purpose of that programme is not to raise public spending, not some hidden public spending plan as the Conservatives have it, but it is to reduce public spending on unemployment.
The Prime Minister's warning to Tory activists in Scotland yesterday of the midsummer nightmare of a Labour government putting up taxes and an early budget was echoed by the Chancellor.
This July budget is going to raise tax, spend a lot of money for what sound like worthwhile purposes, but which will damage UK Limited by loading it with tax and cost.
You cannot take billions of pounds out of privatised utilities without damaging pension funds, prices and investment. Fundamentally, it does not sustain a full Parliament's programme.
Labour strategists know they must convince voters that a Labour government could make a difference without putting up taxes. They believe the resounding victory in Wirral South shows they can get that message across. But the Tories believe Labour are still vulnerable on tax, and acknowledging the possibility of Labour winning the next election will focus voters' minds on the dangers they say that will bring. Carol Walker, BBC News, Westminster.
The Albanian government is to resign following weeks of violent protests over the collapse of investment schemes. But the Albanian president has said the new government would probably still be made up of members of the ruling party, although there would be consultations with the opposition. 9 people have died in rioting in the southern port of Vlora in the last 24 hours, and demonstrations continued in the capital Tirana, from where our South Europe correspondent Orla Guerin reports.
If anyone is in control in Vlora, it's the anti-government protesters. They're heavily armed and they're angry. The streets are manned by demonstrators with every kind of weapon imaginable. Rifles, handguns, even grenades. They're blocking traffic in and out of Vlora with improvised roadblocks. The security forces are nowhere to be seen. In the words of one eyewitness, it's mayhem. The overnight killings in Vlora have turned what was already a tense situation into a crisis for President Sali Berisha. The government had withstood 6 weeks of protests, but this violence was the worst so far and could not be ignored. Today the protesters were out in force in Vlora once again, insisting the government had brought the country to the brink of bankruptcy and must go. Student leaders said they would stay on the streets as long as it takes. Last night's bloodshed, they said, had marked a point of no return. Tonight, for the first time, President Berisha blinked. He sacrificed his government. But the ruling Democratic Party is to form the new administration, although the opposition will be consulted. It's unlikely that'll be enough to satisfy the protesters or stop the waves of unrest that are rolling over the country. Orla Guerin, BBC News, Tirana.
In northern Germany, more than 12,000 people have taken to the streets to protest at the imminent arrival of a consignment of nuclear waste. The demonstration in the city of Lüneburg, north of Hamburg, was peaceful, but the organisers say they'll step up their efforts to stop the waste arriving next week. Our correspondent William Horsley reports.
The pulse of German anti-nuclear protest is speeding up. The attempt to block the nuclear waste shipment is uniting hardened campaigners and local people in northern Germany. The rally here was peaceful, but its leaders said the main confrontation is still to come on Monday when the radioactive cargo arrives in the area. More than 300 miles to the south, dozens of arrests were made as police cleared the way for the biggest shipment of its kind to start. The reinforced containers known as casters hold reprocessed fuel sent back from France and waste from German power plants. Police say it will reach its destination.
Die Polizei hat eine Menge Möglichkeiten zu handeln.
Our orders are to use only as much force as necessary. But if it comes to it, we have our batons and our water cannon. We have to make sure that this convoy gets through.
The German anti-nuclear movement is preparing for civil disobedience on a large scale. These demonstrators now think they're winning the all-important battle for public opinion.
Popular feelings are running high, and the demonstrators say they'll hold their ground as the nuclear waste arrives here in northern Germany over the next 2 days. The demonstrators believe what's at stake is not just the future of one storage site, but of the German nuclear industry. William Horsley, BBC News, Lüneburg.
Paddy Ashdown, speaking at the Liberal Democrats' Scottish conference in Paisley, has attacked both Labour and the government for their policies on tax. He also criticised them for not backing a meaningful Scottish Parliament. Elsewhere, the Liberal Democrat Lord Jenkins upset some in his party by speaking of the potential for a merger with Labour if, as he put it, there's a marriage of true and settled minds. BBC Scotland's political editor Brian Taylor reports.
Paddy Ashdown condemned the Tories for blocking devolution, but his sharpest attack was upon Labour. He accused them of opposing increased social spending while they backed tax cuts.
If you haven't got the guts to vote against tax cuts in the House of Commons, then you haven't got the right to campaign against their consequences in the country.
No talk here then of merger with Labour, the notion floated elsewhere by Lord Jenkins, Liberal Democrat leader in the Lords. Rather, Scottish Lib Dems want to sharpen their identity in seats vulnerable to the Tories. But as unions braved Edinburgh Gales today to protest against council cuts, Labour leaders insisted they could make better use of existing budgets.
The reality is that people are fed up with the extra taxation, fed up with broken tax promises, and expect Labour to live within, for the short term, the expenditure plans laid down by the government, but with wholly different priorities.
But SNP leaders at their National Council meeting in Perth also saw electoral gain in equating Labour with the Tories.
The Tories are going down to electoral oblivion south of the border, and that's the best circumstances for the SNP to win north of the border. Tony Blair is cloning an entire party on the Tories, and that again gives the SNP's radical vision a huge advantage.
The Liberal Democrats themselves came under Tory fire.
The people that are conning the nation are the Liberals in pretending that there's some easy way in which you can get more money for public services. They want to increase taxes. We believe that that would be very detrimental.
Here in Paisley, it's been a day for reasserting political identity. The Scottish Liberal Democrats insist they can distinguish between working with Labour over constitutional reform and condemning their rival's economic platform. Brian Taylor, BBC News, Paisley.
Prison officers have called off their strike at Wormwood Scrubs Jail in London. They had refused to report for work this morning in a dispute over new shift patterns, but tonight prison officials agreed to hold consultations on the proposed changes. 1,200 inmates were locked in their cells for most of the day. The Chinese Prime Minister Li Peng has pledged to continue with Deng Xiaoping's economic reforms and develop a strong military. He was addressing the first meeting of the National People's Congress since the death of the veteran leader 10 days ago. Our correspondent Humphrey Hawksley reports from Beijing.
Members of China's parliament climb the steps of the Great Hall of the People in Tiananmen Square. There's nearly 3,000 of them representing the world's most populous country. They're all unelected, and the army has a large say. After a brief silent tribute to Deng Xiaoping, they heard the Communist Party's plan for 21st century China. The Prime Minister Li Peng outlined his vision for a communist superstate equal in power and influence to any other country around. A developed China won't constitute a world threat, he said, but global issues shouldn't be decided by just one power. China would continue opening up to the West. It would also strengthen its military and work with other countries towards creating a prosperous and progressive new world. From this opening session of the National People's Congress, China has made absolutely clear its long-term goals. It will become a developed country with a modern and well-trained military, and Russia is its main strategic ally. The focus will remain on the economy, and political reform of any substance is simply not on the agenda. Humphrey Hawksley, BBC News, Beijing.
Here, learner drivers will no longer be able to get experienced motorists to take their tests for them. From today, candidates must show identification which carries a photograph and signature before they can sit the tests. John McIntyre reports.
Before we start the test, could I have a look at your driving licence and your photograph for you?
Carol Muriel was among the first to have to produce photographic ID. She's one of the 1.5 million people who take their test every year. The new scheme is intended to crack down on the 200 to 300 fraudulent candidates who take the test on behalf of a friend or relative.
Up to now, there have been limited safeguards to prevent it happening, but with the new requirement for photo identification, it should make it more difficult for people to impersonate other drivers.
Examiners pick up on most impersonations, but cheating in the theory test has been a cause for concern. Today, a genuine success for Carol, who fully supports the changes.
Well, if you've got nothing to hide, why not?
Apart from the obvious safety concerns, the agency's also aware that fraudsters can use full licences to open bank accounts or make false social security claims. Eventually, though, all driving licences will have to carry a photograph. It's part of a European directive which has to be fully implemented by the year 2001. John McIntyre, BBC News.
Now sport, and with news of how France plotted a famous victory over England at Twickenham, here's Helen Rollason.
It was one of international rugby's most inspired comebacks in recent memory. Trailing by 14 points and hampered by injury, France dominated the second half at Twickenham, and 2 tries and a late penalty overwhelmed England. Final score, England 20, France 23.
On home turf, with 2 emphatic victories behind them, they were overwhelming favourites, and perhaps they hadn't quite grasped that France would provide an altogether different test to either Scotland or Ireland. Certainly, the early exchanges offered little evidence of what a desperate struggle lay ahead, as England tore at the French almost with abandon, their domination bringing 3 early penalties for Grayson and a 9-3 lead. That advantage was widened further when England finally cut away through the French defence, Lawrence Delalio breaking clear for the opening try. And when in the second half Grayson added a drop goal and a penalty, England, 14 points clear, seemed to have the game and championship in the bag, with a Grand Slam beckoning. Suddenly, the French stormed back, seizing on English errors and indecision, Le Flamand grabbing a richly deserved try with 19 minutes to go. The initiative had been lost, and 7 minutes later, English resolve buckled again as La Maison scythed his way through. Scores level and England on the rack. They couldn't take it, and La Maison stepped up for the decisive penalty, which reduced the season's plans to ashes.
Worst 30 minutes of my life, Paul, as bad as that. When you're leading 26, and you're looking to build on it, instead of that it goes the other way, then that's hard to bear.
So now it's France who have the Grand Slam in their sights after one of the most spirited and unexpected comebacks of recent years. Kevin Geary, BBC News.
Meanwhile, at Murrayfield, Scotland's miserable season took a turn for the better. Like France, they had to come from behind, but their victory was much more comfortable. They beat Ireland 38-10.
Ireland came to Murrayfield in what was effectively a wooden spoon decider, looking for their first win against the Scots in 9 years. And the early signs were encouraging. Fullback Jim Staples turning defence into attack to release Dennis Hickey for his second try in 3 games. But the Irish captain was to play no further part in the contest, a hamstring injury depriving the visitors of one of their most inspirational players. To add insult to Irish injury, Scotland drew level 6 minutes later, when former rugby league player Alan Tate celebrated his first cap in 9 years with a poacher's score. That was the cue for a rampant second half performance from Scotland, and yet another disappointing Irish collapse. Peter Walton's score emphasised Scottish forward domination, but the backs proved that they could be just as effective, Gregor Townsend rounding off yet another incisive Scottish break. With Ireland by now resigned to a second successive wooden spoon, Tony Stanger breached the visitors' defence once again. England can only hope that Scotland take this kind of form to Paris in a fortnight. Sue Thel, BBC News.
So France will clinch the championship and a Grand Slam if they beat Scotland at home in a fortnight's time. Ireland's 3rd defeat in 4 games means they'll take the wooden spoon. Manchester United strengthened their grip at the top of the FA Premiership with a convincing win over Coventry City. Karapoborski scored the 3rd of United's goals. The first 2 came in the first 5 minutes. A superb shot by Matt Le Tissier dented Newcastle's title ambitions and boosted struggling Southampton. Ian Wright scored his 25th goal of the season as Arsenal beat Everton. And 2 goals from Matt Elliott helped Leicester recover from their midweek FA Cup disappointment by beating Wimbledon. Manchester United are 4 points clear of Liverpool, who play Aston Villa tomorrow. Arsenal move above Newcastle. Wimbledon dropped to 6 after a rare defeat. Dean Saunders gave Nottingham Forest new owners a successful start at Tottenham. Forest move out of the bottom 3. West Ham and Middlesbrough both lost. Steve Coppell's return to the helm of Crystal Palace was rewarded with an emphatic win at Oxford. Bruce Dyer scored twice in the second half as Palace kept in contention for the playoffs. The final score, 4-1. No movement at the top of Division 1. Wolves had a goalless draw with Ipswich. Barnsley beat Southend. Sheffield United drew at Portsmouth. Norwich beat Huddersfield. In the Scottish Premier Division, George Cadet set Celtic on their way to a valuable win against Hearts. Craig Moore rescued a point for Rangers at Aberdeen. Celtic closed the gap on Rangers to 5 points with 8 games to play. The 2 meet in the quarter-finals of the Scottish Cup next Thursday. Dundee United beat Dunfermline. Football's world governing body, FIFA, has rejected calls for television replays to help referees make decisions. FIFA's International Board decided at their annual conference in Belfast not to allow video replays. The debate surfaced again after this incident on Wednesday night when Chelsea were awarded a penalty to beat Leicester in the FA Cup.
Our game is based on human beings, and human beings are men or women. They commit mistakes and errors. and our game has to live with these errors.
The Welsh golfer Ian Woosnam will take a one-shot lead into the final round of the Dubai Classic tomorrow. Spain's Jose Maria Olazabal, playing his first tournament for 18 months, is only 5 shots behind Woosnam. Woosnam produced a storming finish to his third round, picking up 3 shots in the last 2 holes. He moved into a share of the lead when he chipped in for this eagle at the 17th. And then a birdie at the last took Woosnam into the outright lead on 13 under. Weather permitting, the 4th one-day cricket international between New Zealand and England will begin in Auckland in just over 10 minutes. Heavy rain frustrated attempts to play the game earlier today. Peter.
And we've just heard that Diana, Princess of Wales, has reached an out-of-court settlement with the Express newspaper. She'd issued a libel writ after the paper claimed she planned to keep some of the money from the charity auction of her dresses. That's all from the BBC Newsroom tonight. From Helen and me, good night.
Psychopaths are defined as ruthless and cunning, people without conscience, people without remorse. Yet technically they're not insane. The most dangerous are known in the prison system as the predators. Traditionally they're considered untreatable, but one man believes he's got inside their minds and found a treatment, even a cure. So will we eventually be able to let out the predators? Panorama, Monday, 9:30, BBC1.
Good evening to you. It's a pretty stormy night in the north and west. This cold front's not just bringing rain, but it's bringing strong winds down from the north as well. Winds, in fact, that are gusting over 60 miles an hour. And those strong winds and rain coming down from the northwest as we go through the night. But with all that wind, with all that rain about, it is going to be a pretty mild night. Now, tomorrow morning, I think the heaviest of the rain to start with could be over northern England, Wales, down into the southwest. Brighter further north, but still a lot of showers from the word go in the far north. Mostly dry over East Anglia in the southeast, but pretty cloudy. But we will be getting some rain coming down there through the morning, and then that rain clearing away through the afternoon. So I think over many southern parts of England, up the eastern side of England, dry in the afternoon with a good deal of sunshine. A lot of showers further north, and those showers turning to snow over the mountains, particularly in Scotland. It's still going to be quite windy tomorrow, but not as windy as it has been through today. That'll be taking the edge off the temperatures, though, so certainly feeling colder than today. That's it. Bye for now.
Well, now, here's an update on tonight's National Lottery draw. The 6 winning numbers are confirmed as 2, 8, 23, 33, 42 and 49, and the bonus number is 14. Early indications show that there are 20 jackpot winners this week, each winning just over £408,000.
My name is Norman. Barry Norman.
No, that's not how you say it, Barry.